There are moments in the spiritual world so small and silent that they go entirely unnoticed on earth, yet in eternity they explode with a force that shakes heaven itself. Saint Faustina once witnessed one of these moments, a moment so unexpected, so disproportionate in its power, that even she, a mystic accustomed to divine mysteries, was left trembling. It began with something so ordinary that most Catholics recite it without a second thought, a single Hail Mary. She saw what happened when that brief prayer was offered for a dying soul at the very brink of judgment, and she saw why Jesus himself called this prayer a weapon, a rescue line, and a shield, all contained in just a few whispered words. But the shock was not merely in what she saw. It was in what Jesus revealed afterward, something he said the world had almost entirely forgotten. He told her that one Hail Mary, spoken with sincerity, can alter the destiny of a soul. Yet he also said that very few understand this, and even fewer use it. Faustina was stunned, and she begged him to explain why. Jesus promised he would, and what he revealed is something you must hear. The vision began quietly, almost imperceptibly, as many of Faustina's encounters with the supernatural often did. She found herself suddenly aware of souls who were suspended in a state of aching need, souls who could no longer act, no longer speak, no longer choose anything for themselves. They were utterly dependent on the living, and yet the living rarely thought of them. Faustina felt a heaviness in her chest, a weight that did not belong to her, but pressed itself into her heart with unmistakable urgency. These souls were waiting. They were longing, and their longing reached her like a silent cry. She could see one soul in particular, hovering in great darkness as if surrounded by a storm that had swallowed every trace of hope. It was not despair she saw, but something more desperate, a helplessness so complete it pierced her. The soul was not evil. It was simply unprepared, wounded, burdened, and terribly alone. Faustina sensed its fear, the confusion that comes in the moment when eternity draws near and the truth of one's life stands uncovered. She did not know why she was being shown this, only that she could not look away. As she watched, something within her shifted. She realized with a shock that these souls were not shown to her because she was holy, but because they had no one else. A tremor of responsibility, almost like guilt, ran through her. Why had she not prayed more? Why had she allowed so many opportunities to slip past without lifting the dying, the forgotten, the suffering? In that moment, she felt the immense distance between what heaven offers and what earth responds with. She wondered whether this soul would receive help in time, whether anyone even knew it was dying. Then a question rose inside her, unbidden and almost frightening. How much can one prayer really do at such a moment? She did not yet know the answer, but she sensed that Jesus was about to show her something that would change the way she prayed forever. When Jesus appeared to Faustina in the midst of that vision, his presence did not come with thunder or majesty, but with a sorrow so deep it seemed to bend the light around him. She felt it before she saw him, the grief of a God whose mercy is infinite, yet who watches countless souls slip toward eternity without a single prayer rising on their behalf. When he spoke, his voice carried both tenderness and an ache that pierced her to the core. He told her that the world had grown numb to the reality of the dying. People feared death, avoided death, ignored the dying, and yet their prayers, especially the small ones, held a power they did not understand. Faustina lowered her head, overwhelmed, sensing that she was being drawn into a truth far greater than anything she had grasped before. Jesus said that many souls at the hour of death are not lost because they desire evil, but because they are weak, wounded, or completely alone. He lamented how few people think to offer even a brief prayer, one moment of intercession, that could summon a grace capable of lifting a soul from the edge. Faustina felt the weight of his words. She understood that this sorrow was not symbolic, but literal. Souls were suffering because so few remembered them. Then Jesus told her that he wished to reveal something about the Hail Mary, something hidden, something forgotten. His tone shifted, becoming almost solemn, as if preparing her for a revelation that would require silence to absorb. Faustina's heart raced. She felt unworthy, frightened even, because she sensed that what he was about to explain would overturn her understanding of prayer itself. Jesus looked into her soul, and she felt his gaze settle on every part of her that still doubted the significance of small acts of love. He told her that before she could understand the power of a single Hail Mary, she needed to understand what happens in the spiritual world when any prayer is lifted with sincerity. He was leading her slowly, inviting her to listen deeply, to receive, not merely to hear. Faustina felt the tension build inside her, not as fear, but as a profound anticipation. She knew Jesus was preparing her for something immense, something that touched the very heart of divine mercy. And then he paused, as if allowing the silence itself to speak. The world around her faded. Only his sorrow, his patience, and his yearning for souls remained. She braced herself, sensing that the next words from his lips would unveil a mystery that humanity had never fully grasped. Jesus began to reveal what he called the hidden mechanism of grace, a reality that human eyes cannot perceive, but that governs the spiritual world with absolute precision. He told Faustina that every sincere prayer, no matter how small, becomes like a spark thrown into immense darkness. The darkness cannot extinguish it. Instead, the spark becomes a point of reference, a light that heaven can act upon. Grace, he explained, is always ready to descend, always poised to flood the soul, but it seeks even the smallest opening created by human cooperation. A prayer, even a brief, almost whispered one, creates that opening. Faustina listened, astonished, realizing that she had underestimated the value of simple prayers prayed in ordinary moments. Jesus told her that the economy of grace is not measured by eloquence or length, but by humility and trust. Heaven responds not to the complexity of words, but to the posture of the heart. One humble plea can outweigh a mountain of neglect. One genuine request for Mary's intercession can become the thread heaven uses to pull a soul back from the edge. It is not the magnitude of the prayer, but the willingness of love that gives it force. As Jesus spoke, Faustina saw something like a vast unseen system of channels and currents, each one carrying grace to souls according to the prayers offered for them. Most of these channels remained empty, unused, not because grace was scarce, but because few people bothered to open them. She felt a pang of sorrow, realizing how much power humanity leaves untouched simply because it forgets to ask. And yet she also felt hope rising within her, because it meant that nothing, absolutely nothing, was insignificant when offered in love. But even as she absorbed this truth, Jesus held back the full explanation. He did not yet reveal why the Hail Mary in particular carried a weight unlike any other short prayer. Faustina sensed that he was guiding her step by step, preparing her heart to understand something she might not have been ready to grasp all at once. The more he spoke, the more she understood that the spiritual world is governed by laws far more beautiful and far more delicate than anything on earth. Grace moves swiftly, but it waits for permission. And prayer, especially small, sincere prayer, is that permission. Yet within her, a struggle grew. She wondered whether she personally had failed to pray enough, whether she had neglected souls that had depended on her. Jesus saw her thoughts and reassured her gently, telling her that guilt was not his intention. He wanted revelation, not condemnation. He wanted her to see that heaven's generosity is always greater than human weakness. Still, the weight of what she was learning pressed on her. She knew Jesus was leading her toward a truth that would reshape the way she prayed for the rest of her life. And then, as she waited, Jesus looked toward the suffering soul that had drawn her into this vision. His gaze told her that the next moment would reveal more than a theory. It would show her the living consequence of this hidden law of grace and how one single ordinary Hail Mary could unleash a power far beyond anything she had imagined. The scene unfolded before Faustina with a clarity that made her forget she was merely an observer. The soul she had seen earlier, the one trembling in a darkness that felt heavy enough to suffocate hope itself, now seemed suspended between two realities. On one side was the weight of its life, its fears, its failures, its wounds. On the other was the pull of grace, faint and flickering, as if waiting for a signal to break through. Faustina felt as though she were watching a final battle silently raging within a single heartbeat. Nothing moved, yet everything was at stake. Then suddenly, like a whisper slicing through still air, a prayer rose. Faustina did not hear it with her ears, but felt it with her entire soul. Someone on earth, she did not know who, had paused in the midst of an ordinary moment and offered a Hail Mary for the dying, not with drama, not with spiritual fervor, but with simple sincerity. There was no vision, no emotion, only a single honest request for Mary's intercession. Yet the instant that prayer was uttered, Faustina saw the spiritual world shudder. A trembling light appeared above the suffering soul, fragile at first, like the first flame that struggles to catch against the wind, but it did catch, and when it did, the darkness recoiled. Faustina watched as that tiny spark, born from an unseen heart on earth, descended upon the soul like a thread of gold. It wrapped itself gently around the soul's suffering, not erasing it, but illuminating it. The soul, which moments earlier seemed paralyzed by fear, stirred as though awakening from a long, oppressive sleep. Its posture shifted, lifting slightly, drawn toward the light with a longing that was both painful and beautiful. Faustina felt tears burn her eyes, not from sorrow, but from awe. Was this truly the effect of just one prayer? The darkness, sensing loss, surged back with a force that startled her. It pressed against the soul, trying to reclaim what had slipped from its grasp. But the golden thread held firm, shimmering with a strength far greater than its delicate appearance suggested. Faustina realized then what Jesus had meant. Heaven does not need grand offerings to act. It needs permission, the smallest opening of human love, to unleash what the soul cannot ask for itself. And this Hail Mary, this brief, almost casual prayer, had become that opening. Then something extraordinary happened. The golden thread brightened, widening until it became more like a narrow path of light leading upward. The soul, trembling but no longer paralyzed, turned toward it. Faustina could feel its surprise, its gratitude, its fragile hope. She sensed that the battle was not fully won, but the direction had changed. What moments ago seemed like inevitable descent had shifted toward ascent, and all of it, every inch of movement, every flicker of strength, had been triggered by a single prayer from someone who would never know what they had done. Faustina's heart pounded. She stared at the soul, at the darkness, at the tender but unstoppable force of grace now flowing through that one Hail Mary. She felt overwhelmed by how disproportionate it all was. How could such a small action, spoken by someone likely distracted or busy or unaware, wield such power? Why did heaven pour out such immense grace for such a tiny offering? She turned to Jesus, shaken, breathless, desperate for understanding, and she saw that he had been watching her reaction more than the soul's struggle. There was a quiet intensity in his eyes, as if this moment, this precise moment, was the very reason he had brought her into the vision. Faustina understood. The explanation she had been waiting for was finally coming. Jesus stepped closer, and for a moment Faustina felt as though time itself had paused. The light of that single Hail Mary still glowed around the soul, and the darkness, though pushed back, hovered at the edges, waiting. Jesus let her absorb the sight, the living proof of what one small prayer could accomplish. Then he turned his gaze toward her, and she felt the full gravity of what he was about to reveal. He told her that the power of the Hail Mary does not come merely from its words, nor from the one who prays it, but from the one to whom it is addressed. Every time a soul calls upon Mary with sincerity, even briefly, heaven bends toward the earth with extraordinary tenderness. Mary, he said, is the vessel through which he chose to enter the world, and so he allows her intercession a nearness and a swiftness unmatched by any other simple prayer. When someone whispers, "Hail Mary," they invoke not only a request but a relationship, a maternal one that cannot ignore the suffering of a child in danger. Faustina listened, trembling, as Jesus explained that Mary's intercession is immediate, because her heart is fully united with his. She does not hesitate. She does not deliberate. She responds. Her prayer amplifies the human prayer, transforming it into something far greater than what the person intended. Jesus told her that this union, the heart of the Son and the heart of the Mother, creates a channel of grace so powerful that even one humble Hail Mary becomes a spiritual lifeline capable of altering the direction of a soul at the very threshold of eternity. But Jesus went deeper. He revealed that the Hail Mary carries a hidden humility that makes it especially potent. When someone prays, they acknowledge their need, their smallness, their dependence. The prayer begins with praise but ends with a plea. Pray for us now and at the hour of our death. In that plea, sincerity cracks open the hardened surface of the human heart, allowing grace to pour through. It is not the length of the prayer, but the posture it creates inside the soul that gives God permission to act. And Mary, as the one closest to his mercy, rushes into that opening without hesitation. Faustina felt a warmth spread through her chest as Jesus continued. He said that when a Hail Mary is offered for the dying, it carries an added force because it echoes the very purpose for which he gave humanity his mother, to stand beside souls at their most vulnerable moments. Mary does for the dying what she did for him at the foot of the cross. She accompanies, she protects, she intercedes. And when someone on earth asks her to intervene, even with a single breath, she brings with her the light of Christ that pushes back the darkness, even when the soul cannot ask for itself. Faustina's eyes filled with tears. She had always loved the Hail Mary, but she had never understood this depth of meaning, this magnitude of mercy embedded within each word. She looked at the soul, still wrapped in the golden light, still trembling but no longer drowning, and she realized that the entire shift, the reversal of despair, the glimpse of hope, had happened not because someone prayed a long rosary or offered great sacrifices, but because one person, somewhere in the world, took a moment to call upon the Mother of God. Jesus let her feel the full weight of this truth. He wanted her to know, not as theology, not as a pious thought, but as lived reality, that heaven is moved by the smallest act of love. And then he told her something that pierced her heart. Many souls are saved, strengthened, or softened in their final moments because someone prayed for them without ever knowing their name. Most of these prayers go uncredited on earth, yet they are celebrated in heaven with joy beyond measure. Faustina bowed her head, overwhelmed. She finally understood why Jesus had shown her this vision, why he had revealed the hidden mechanism of grace, why he had allowed her to witness what one Hail Mary could do. The world had forgotten this truth. Hearts had grown distracted, too busy to realize the treasure they held in such a simple, familiar prayer, and Jesus wanted her to remind them. But he was not finished. there was still one more truth he wished to reveal, one that would forever change the way she and we see the value of even the smallest prayer. Faustina stood in silence, letting the truth Jesus had revealed sink into her soul. The vision of that trembling soul, lifted by a single Hail Mary, lingered before her like an imprint she knew she would carry forever. But Jesus now turned her attention away from the soul and toward the world, toward us, toward the countless people who go about their lives unaware of the eternal weight resting quietly in their hands. His voice softened, but the urgency in it remained unmistakable. He told her that humanity has grown accustomed to measuring value by what feels dramatic or impressive. People think that only great sacrifices, long prayers, or profound holiness can influence eternity. But heaven measures differently. Heaven sees love, not scale, sincerity, not spectacle, availability, not perfection. And because of this, the smallest prayer offered with trust becomes something immeasurable. Jesus said that if the world understood this, truly understood it, millions of souls would receive help who now suffer without it. Faustina felt his sadness again, but this time it was mingled with hope. He told her that countless souls at the hour of death rely on the prayers of strangers, of ordinary people who will never meet them on earth. A mother doing chores who whispers a Hail Mary, a student walking to school who offers a brief prayer for the dying, an elderly man sitting by a window praying because he no longer knows what else he can give. These simple prayers, anonymous, uncelebrated, unseen, become beams of light piercing the deepest shadows of spiritual danger. And then Jesus showed Faustina the world as he sees it. She saw cities glowing with millions of lives rushing through their days, unaware that heaven listened to every sigh, every whispered plea, every distracted prayer offered in passing. She saw streets where people hurried, tired and burdened, yet within their reach lay the power to alter someone's eternity. She saw hospital rooms where the dying lay alone, unaware that grace hovered near, waiting only for one small request from someone far away. She saw families who never prayed, people who never thought of God, and yet heaven waited for the smallest invitation to enter their lives. Faustina felt something stir within her that was both sorrow and resolve. She understood now that Jesus was not simply revealing a mystery, he was entrusting her with a responsibility. If people knew the truth about the power of their smallest prayers, they would never again dismiss them as insignificant. They would realize that eternity bends toward the humble, that grace rushes through even the narrowest opening, that no soul is beyond reach if someone, somewhere, whispers a Hail Mary with trust. Jesus continued, telling her that in every generation, God raises voices to remind the world of forgotten truths, and this was one of them. The enemy works tirelessly to convince souls that their prayers are meaningless, that small efforts do nothing, that only the exceptional matters. This lie, Jesus said, has silenced more prayers than persecution ever could. People stop praying not because they hate God, but because they believe they make no difference. And in that silence, countless graces remain unopened. Faustina felt her heart burn with a mixture of compassion and urgency. She saw that even the most distracted, imperfect Hail Mary carries more power than the enemy can withstand because it calls upon the one who crushed his head. She understood now why Jesus lamented the scarcity of such prayers, not because heaven needs them, but because souls do, and each person on earth possesses the ability to offer them. Then Jesus spoke words that would mark her mission forever. He said that the world has forgotten the weight of love contained in simple prayer, and he desired her to awaken it again. Not through grand teachings, but through the witness of the truth she had just seen, that souls rise or fall on the tide of grace, stirred by even one humble cry for Mary's help. Faustina looked at him with trembling devotion. If one Hail Mary could do what she had seen, then the responsibility resting on every heart was staggering. But so was the gift. For the first time, she understood that the simplest prayer is not a small thing. It is a seed of eternity placed into human hands. And she knew Jesus was preparing her for the final revelation, the one that would explain why he had chosen this moment, this soul and this prayer, to make his message known to the world. Jesus allowed the vision to widen, and Faustina suddenly felt as though she were standing before a sweeping tapestry of human history. Past, present, and future, woven not with events, but with prayers. Threads of light appeared everywhere, some faint, some brilliant, some stretching far across time, others barely beginning before fading out. These were the prayers of humanity, woven into the fabric of salvation in ways that no person on earth could ever fully comprehend. Yet amid all these threads, one kind glowed with a distinctive radiance, the ones born from the Hail Mary. Faustina watched as these particular threads shimmered like gold, coursing through the tapestry with a swiftness the others did not possess. They moved directly, effortlessly, as though carried by an invisible hand that guided them straight to the places where they were most needed. Jesus explained that these were the prayers entrusted to his mother, and because her will is perfectly united with his, they never lose their way. They do not scatter. They do not falter. They move with purpose and precision, touching the exact souls heaven intends them to reach. Then Jesus revealed the secret he had been leading her toward, the truth he said the world had forgotten. He told her that the Hail Mary is not merely a request for intercession. It is a renewal of the moment when God entered human history. Every time someone says, Hail Mary, they unknowingly echo the Annunciation, the instant heaven opened and the Savior came into the world. And because of this, every Hail Mary carries within it a fragment of that same opening, a doorway through which grace rushes into the present moment with astonishing force. Faustina's breath caught. She had never imagined that such a familiar prayer could contain such a mystery. Jesus continued, telling her that the more a prayer resembles the posture of Mary's fiat, the humble yes that changed everything, the more heaven uses it to reshape the world. The Hail Mary carries this humility within its very structure. It begins with praise, moves into remembrance, and ends with surrender. It is a prayer that bends the heart toward God in the same way Mary's heart was bent toward him in her perfect willingness. And because Mary's willingness brought Christ into the world, any prayer aligned with it becomes a vessel through which Christ continues to enter lives, especially at the hour of death. Faustina felt awe rising in her chest, but also a kind of ache. If this was true, if the Hail Mary was truly a continuation of the moment of Christ's coming, then the world had been holding a treasure beyond comprehension, mostly unnoticed in the palms of ordinary people. How many times had she prayed it without grasping its depth? How many souls had been lifted or strengthened through these prayers without anyone on earth knowing? Jesus' voice grew tender. He told her that heaven is full of souls who were saved, softened, or opened to God's mercy because someone prayed a Hail Mary for them. Someone who likely forgot the prayer a minute later, unaware of what they had done. He said that the true secret is this: the smallest prayer offered through Mary becomes magnified beyond measure because she always gives Christ. She gives him as she gave him at the Annunciation, at Bethlehem, on the road to Calvary, and at the foot of the cross. Every time her name is invoked with sincerity, she brings him again to the soul in need. Then Jesus showed Faustina something that nearly brought her to her knees. She saw souls in purgatory who had received unexpected bursts of consolation from a single Hail Mary offered far away. She saw the dying receiving a last-moment clarity or courage because someone whispered the prayer while commuting or washing dishes. She saw people trapped in sin, suddenly feeling an unexplained nudge toward repentance because a stranger had offered the prayer for those most in need. Each instance was small, humble, invisible to the world, yet monumental in the invisible realm. Faustina felt the weight of the revelation settle on her. This was the secret Jesus said humanity had forgotten, that God gives infinite power to the smallest act when it is united to the heart of His mother. The Hail Mary is not a repetition, it is participation. It is the soul stepping into the mystery of Christ's coming. It is humanity cooperating with heaven in the simplest, most accessible way. And Jesus wanted this truth to be known again. The vision began to soften around her. The golden threads dimmed, the tapestry receded, and only Jesus remained before her. His eyes held a plea, not of desperation, but of profound longing. He wished the world to rediscover what it had misplaced, the knowledge that salvation history does not advance only through great saints or dramatic miracles, but through the countless hidden Hail Marys whispered by ordinary hearts every day. Faustina understood. What she had been shown was not merely for her, it was for all of us. And Jesus was about to complete his message with the final truth she needed to hear. The vision began to fade, but Jesus' presence only intensified, as though the diminishing of the images around them was meant to sharpen the impact of his final words. Faustina felt herself standing once more between heaven and earth, in that mysterious place where divine truth becomes unmistakably clear. The trembling soul she had watched earlier remained suspended in the soft glow created by the single Hail Mary, now steadier, now brighter, as if held aloft by a grace that would not withdraw. Jesus let her look at it one last time, then turned his eyes toward her with a solemn tenderness that pierced straight into her spirit. He told her that what she had seen was not an exception. It was a law of mercy, a law he himself established, rooted in his love for humanity and his union with his mother. He explained that while God alone is the source of grace, he delights in allowing his children to participate in its distribution. And among all the ways humans can cooperate with that grace, the Hail Mary stands uniquely accessible and uniquely powerful. It is, he said, the prayer that opens the smallest hearts and the darkest moments to the light of redemption. Faustina trembled as he continued. Many people, Jesus said, underestimate the prayer because of its familiarity. They recite it quickly, distractedly, often without reflection, and assume that such a simple act has little weight. But heaven does not measure the value of prayer by human standards. Heaven measures it by the humility it expresses, the trust it awakens, and the love it calls forth from Mary's heart. Even a half-whispered Hail Mary, lukewarm, imperfect, rushed, becomes a plea carried by the Queen of Heaven with the fullness of her maternal love. She perfects what is imperfect. She strengthens what is weak. She offers what is small with the magnitude of her own fiat. Jesus' gaze deepened, and Faustina felt that he was about to resolve the question that had hovered over her since the beginning. Why does a single Hail Mary possess such disproportionate power? Why does so little accomplish so much? His answer came quietly, but with the force of something eternal. He told her that at the hour of death, the soul stands at the threshold where every earthly support falls away. Fear rises, memories flood back, regrets cry out from long buried places. The enemy takes advantage of this vulnerability, whispering despair, confusion, or numbness. But the soul is still free, able to turn toward or away from God in its final moments. What it desperately needs is even the smallest flicker of light, the tiniest spark strong enough to break through the suffocating shadows. A single Hail Mary becomes that spark because it summons Mary, the one whose presence no darkness can withstand. He explained that when Mary approaches a dying soul, she brings with her the memory of Christ's mercy, the warmth of his love, and the quiet strength that enabled her to remain faithful even at the foot of the cross. Souls who would otherwise collapse beneath fear or temptation suddenly find the courage to open themselves, even slightly, to grace. That slight opening is enough for God to rush in, and it happens because someone, somewhere, cared enough to pray one simple Hail Mary. Jesus let the weight of these words linger before he gave the final revelation. He told Faustina that no prayer is wasted, but the Hail Mary carries a unique promise. Whenever it is prayed with sincerity, he grants Mary a special intercessory closeness to the soul in need, especially at the hour of death. Even if the soul resists grace for a lifetime, the prayer of another person allows Mary to stand beside that soul in its final struggle. Many who appear lost are softened at the last moment because a stranger offered that one small prayer. Faustina could barely speak. She felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not only for the souls saved through such prayers, but for the mercy that had allowed her to be shown this truth. Jesus reassured her gently. He told her that she was not meant to carry the weight alone, nor to inspire fear. His desire was simple, that the world rediscover hope by rediscovering the power entrusted to its simplest prayer. He then looked at her with a luminous clarity that struck her heart like a promise. This, he said, is why he asked her to spread devotion to his mercy, not only through great acts but through small ones, through trust, through love, through the Hail Mary, which brings his mercy to the very moments when souls need it most. Faustina lowered her head, overwhelmed by the magnitude of God's generosity in such a humble prayer. She realized that Jesus had now closed the circle, answered the question that had begun the vision, and revealed why he had insisted that even the simplest prayer can shift eternity. And he was now ready for her to share what she had seen, so the world would never again dismiss what heaven magnifies. The light surrounding Jesus softened, and Faustina felt the vision settling into a profound stillness, as if heaven itself were pausing to let his final message echo through her soul. She sensed that what he was about to say was not only the conclusion of the revelation, but its seal, something meant to remain in her heart and in the hearts of all who would hear it. The trembling soul, now steadied by the golden grace of that one Hail Mary, faded gently from her sight. What remained was Jesus alone, radiant with a love so quiet and so powerful that she felt her entire being bow before it. He told her that the world often seeks dramatic signs of God's power, longing for miracles, visions, or extraordinary manifestations. Yet heaven hides its greatest power in simplicity, so that no one, not the poor, nor the busy, nor the weary, nor the sinner, can ever say they lack the means to participate in salvation. The Hail Mary, he said, is not merely a devotion, it is a doorway. A small one, yes, so small that only humility can enter it. But beyond that doorway lies a flood of mercy that can reach the most abandoned soul, the most frightened heart, the most desperate sinner, at the most critical moment of their existence. Faustina felt tears slide down her face as Jesus explained that this prayer remains powerful precisely because it is accessible. No special knowledge is needed, no perfect eloquence, no elevated emotion, only sincerity, only trust. A child can pray it, the elderly can whisper it, the weary can offer it in a breath, and heaven responds every time. Jesus said that in the economy of grace nothing is lost. Even the Hail Mary spoken through distraction or weakness is gathered by Mary's heart, purified by her love, and presented to him as an offering capable of rescuing souls. Then he spoke with a tenderness that pierced her more deeply than any vision. He said that if the world understood what she had seen, if they understood the real, tangible, decisive power of a single Hail Mary, millions of souls would be touched at the hour of death. Countless sinners would find the strength to turn back to God. The lonely would not die alone. The fearful would feel peace. The despairing would find hope. Because Mary, invoked even once, never fails to come. And where she comes, he follows. Faustina felt her heart burn with a mixture of awe and mission. She understood now why Jesus had shown her not just the theology of grace, but the living consequence of a single small prayer. He wanted her to remind the world that holiness is not reserved for the extraordinary. Heaven leans closest to the simple, the humble, the trusting. And through the Hail Mary, even the smallest soul can become a channel of unimaginable mercy. Jesus' voice softened into something almost like a promise. He told her that those who pray the Hail Mary, even occasionally, even imperfectly, will find unexpected strength in their own final hour, because Mary remembers every prayer ever entrusted to her. Not one is forgotten. Not one fails to bear fruit. She comes to every soul who called upon her in life, even if only once. This, he said, is his gift to the world, that through his mother's intercession, no sincere prayer is ever lost, and no moment is ever too late for grace. The vision began to dissolve, and Faustina felt herself returning to the quiet of her convent cell. But her heart was no longer the same. She had seen what one Hail Mary could do. She had seen how heaven moves through the smallest opening. She had seen what Jesus wanted her to share with a world starving for hope. And she knew that her mission, to spread trust in God's mercy, now carried this revelation within it like a hidden flame. As the last trace of the vision faded, she heard his final words echo gently in her soul. Tell them. Tell the world what one small prayer can do.